Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today to the Truth and Liberty Show. So glad to have you joining us today. We've got a great guest in line for you, Erin Lee, the Executive Director of Protect Kids Colorado, and we're going to be talking about the crazy, wacky transgender movement and how to fight back, and she is really fighting back. You're not going to want to miss. Before we get into the monologue for today's show, though, I wanted to remind you guys that the Truth and Liberty Conference, the annual conference, is this September 11th through the 13th here in beautiful Woodland Park, Colorado. And our guest speakers this year are not people you want to miss. Charlie Kirk is actually joining us live and in person on Thursday night to open things up, and it is going to be awesome. Also, Pastor Lorenzo Sewell, who led the prayer at Donald Trump's inauguration, is going to be joining us, and I know he is going to set the house on fire. I'll be speaking. Andrew will be speaking. Several other speakers. We're going to have live dramatic performances, workshops that'll equip you to stand for truth, and dozens of like-minded Christian conservative organizations are going to be here. You can connect with them. It's all about getting equipped, getting informed, and standing for truth in the public square. So join us for this year's Truth and Liberty Conference. You won't want to miss it. Go to our website at truthandliberty.net and you can register today. Also, we have a free gift for you today. We're making available my booklet. It's called Faith for America. Did you know that during World War II, the United States was suffering because the Nazis had counterattacked at what was known as the Battle of the Bulge? They had the 101st Airborne Division surrounded at the Belgian city of Bastogne. We're about to wipe them out. No air cover, no ability to counterattack. We were paralyzed. And God answered the prayer of General George Patton and those of his men as they sought him to clear up the weather. And we were able to advance, to come in with aerial assault and drive back the German forces and march on to Berlin and win the war. That's just one example of how faith and reaching out to God by faith for our nation has turned things around for us in the past and will turn them around for us again. So pick up your copy by going to going to Truth and Liberty GTN, truthandlibertygtn.com. All right, guys, the more Americans learn about the radical LGBT agenda, that those initials, that's lesbian, gay, used to be bisexual, transgender. That's what it is. So it's this soup. You throw into this soup all these different people with sexual problems, and you have a minority that now has immense power in our country and in our culture. But the radical LGBT agenda, the more we learn about what's transpiring in our schools with this agenda, the more Americans hate it. Who can forget the image of the father in Loudoun County, Virginia, who was hauled by force out of a school board meeting simply because he was challenging that school board because of its trans policy that allowed a so-called trans boy to go into the girls' restroom where he raped his daughter? No matter how many times they allow it to happen, the majority of people know, and when I say they, I mean the liberal elites, the majority of people know that it is unfair for a biological male to compete in women's sports. It's common sense. And everybody with common sense realizes that it's also fundamentally wrong to surgically remove a child's sex organs, right? And to plant on them fake organs to make them look like a different sex. People of common sense and good nature also recognize that it is fundamentally wrong to secretly so-called transition a child and not inform that child's parents. In this movement, you see, parents are the enemy because parents are the ones who are looking out for the best interests of their kids. The kids, to the transgender ideologues, are their weapons, their tools, their opportunity to advance their crazy agenda and ideology. Well, guys, we have to stand up and fight back. The time has come. This issue is huge, and we can't let it go on. Make no mistake, the trans ideology is insane. Let me just unpack it a little bit for you. The first thing they do is they say, we need to change the language. So gender, what we used to call gender, is no longer sex. Gender is not what you are objectively, male, female. Gender is what you think and feel, right? So when they say, oh, gender is no longer binary, is not binary, it's because people can think and feel whatever they want, and that has to be treated as fact. No, gender is a feeling. It's subjective. That's number one. So they change the meaning. Number two, they say, and everyone has the right to express their gender, right? You get to act in a way that aligns with your feelings. Regardless of how bizarre or diverse from reality and biological reality your feelings may be, you get to live according to your imagination and your feelings. A 300-pound man with a beard can parade around at work as a fairy princess with lipstick, eyeshadow, and fake breasts in high heels, and no one's allowed to say anything. A man can put on a women's swimsuit, change his name to Georgiana, and compete against women in a girls' swim meet. Why? Because it's wrong to ever challenge someone's feelings. You can never tell someone that the way they relate to an issue is wrong or doesn't make sense. You see, we can't allow anyone to be offended. God forbid you could ever claim that there's such a thing as truth, objective truth. That is the underlying cardinal sin of all time, is to say that there's truth and all people are accountable to that truth. Why, you judgmental thing, how could you ever think such a thing? I get to make up my own truth. After all, I have my truth and you have your truth. It doesn't matter what age you are, by the way, you still get to express your gender. Even little kids have a right to express their gender. Remember how we define gender now. Gender is not what is, but what you think and feel. It even includes getting a doctor to block a child's hormones or cut off body parts or sew on new ones and pretend that now they're a girl or now they're a boy. You know, when a child goes through that procedure, it means they can never have kids. They can never have a normal family. It means you'll never really and truly ever be any full manifestation of either sex, because you've removed your reproductive organs and altered them in a way so that your body cannot, and gone through hormone replacement, you can't fully manifest as the God design gave you, what your every gene in your body is crying out to do in your body. But you can never really be the opposite sex that you think you want to be, because it's all fake and pretend. So you're trapped in this limbo land of an in-between sort of surgical mess. And we wonder, oh, why is it that these kids who've gone through cross-sex surgery are committing suicide now at a higher rate than they did before? That's because we can't ever go to the root of the problem. We can't ever go to the root of the problem and talk about what causes the feelings in the first place. What is the trauma that the individual has experienced? What rejection, what pain, what abuse, what confusion has been injected into their little minds because of these things that has caused them to have the feelings in the first place? No, you can't go there, because that gets down to the God issue. It gets down to who God made you to be. It gets ultimately down to Jesus, that He died for your sins and you're acceptable just the way you are. But we don't want to go there. No, we want to live in our feelings, and we don't want to have to challenge thoughts that are contrary to truth. We want to be able to embrace what we feel and do what we want because we want it, with no other justification. So truth is relative, and truth, there isn't even any truth. So if I feel like I'm a girl or I feel like I'm a boy, then I have a right to act like it and express it. Well, the next thing they do is they say it's not enough for a person to express their own quote-unquote gender. Now, all the world has to get behind them, and we're going to force you to do it. That's right. We have to call boys girls if the boy says he's a girl, even if he's a boy. We have to act normal and pretend like the boy is really a girl. We have to pay out of our own tax dollars for mutilating surgeries. We have to pay for our colleges, our schools, our universities, and everything else to endorse and embrace this philosophy and this ideology. And we can't object to homosexuals having, their own weddings and forcing us to participate in them by baking cakes or serving them with photography or whatever else. Oh, no. No, the whole world has to come along and adhere to this new dogma. Thank God, though. Thank God that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Thank God that there's a new day dawning. I believe the third great awakening is underway. President Donald Trump announced at his inauguration in the second term that the national policy of the United States of America is that there are only two genders, male and female. One of his first acts on day one of his administration was to issue an executive order that abolishes all transgender wording and traces of transgender ideology from the federal government. That means no funding of research, no grants to promote it, no trans ideology IDs on passports or any other place. No transgender personnel are going to be allowed in the military. No boys are going to be, we're not going to fund schools that allow boys to play in girls' sports. We're not going to allow men to be, biological men to live in women's prisons and any other residential environment. Guys, this is common sense. It's setting the ship aright. It has to be done. Now, it might seem harsh at times. And you know, people that suffer from gender dysphoria, their feelings do not align with who they really are biologically. Same-sex attraction, feeling inadequate as a man, and so on. These people are broken and hurting. And often, you know, they feel like they are on the fringes of society. Transgender men don't feel like they fit in as men, but they're obviously not women. Women don't feel like they fit in as women, but they're obviously not men. I have compassion. I think all of us as Christians must have compassion on these people. The studies and evidence, anecdotal, scientific, and everything shows that people that are suffering from this fashion have suffered from some form of trauma. Generally speaking, it's some kind of rejection or some kind of sexual abuse. But the truth is that they can be healed. God Almighty, the love of God through His Spirit and the Lord Jesus Christ, His forgiveness of sins and the gospel bring healing to people. And they can recover and come out of that confusion and out of that slavery and be established as a whole, healthy, prosperous human being, thriving human being. But you know, the left doesn't want that. They think the solution is to lock these people into brokenness. And we call that, they want us to call that affirming. You're going to affirm their gender by letting them mutilate their body. You're going to affirm them. No, you're not affirming their gender. You're affirming their gender confusion is what you're doing. You're lying to them. They want to force the entire world to affirm the gender. And you know, there are few places that are worse in this arena than the state of Colorado. And our guest today is Erin Lee. Erin is the executive director of Protect Kids Colorado and the founder of Stop Gender Ideology. And she is fighting hard against this insanity and tyranny. Her own daughter was secretly transitioned, so-called. I use that word loosely, right? No one is transitioned. You cannot transition from one sex to another. So it's a fake word, right? But she was taken through that indoctrination by a public school in the state of Colorado. And the Lee family was abused by the government, treated as second-class citizens, threatened, and so on. And they sued, and their lawsuit is headed to the United States Supreme Court. But she's also fighting by suing about a recent law that tries to mandate that everybody in Colorado has to use gender-affirming terms and words and speak the pronouns somebody wants to speak in a public venue and call them by a female name even if they're a male, regardless of the Constitution, regardless of your religious or personal convictions, regardless of what you believe to be true, you have to conform. And she's filing a lawsuit to challenge that law. But I tell you what else she's doing. She's pushing forward now 3 ballot measures in this state that we need to get behind and we need to get past in this state to begin to put our foot in the ground, drive a stake in the ground, and stop this insanity. She's told the story of how they rescued her 12-year-old daughter from the secret transitioning. It's called artclub.com. I encourage you guys to check that out. Just Google that on the internet. But also, she's been a guest on many major programs, including Fox News, Glenn Beck, Newsmax, Daily Wire, the Epoch Times, and Daily Mail UK. And so we are very honored to have Erin joining us on today's program of Truth and Liberty. She is a return guest. She's been on the show before. Encourage you guys to check out those episodes as well. So guys, don't think, oh, it's the trans stuff again. It's LGBT again. I don't want to hear any more about that, Richard. Guys, you need to sit down and tune in today's show. You're going to learn some things, and there are opportunities for you to get involved. And don't you want to set this country right? Don't you want to see revival and awakening? Don't you want America to be returned to the values of faith, family, and freedom that we were built upon, those biblical biblical values, then you can't turn this off. We've got to press in. We've got to retake this ground. So why don't you join me now after a brief announcement as I sit down with my good friend and somewhat of a hero, Erin Lee, the Executive Director of Protect Kids, Colorado. Are you passionate about standing for truth in the culture, but don't know how to get started? Well, Truth and Liberty, our mission is to educate, unify, and mobilize the body of Christ to stand for truth in the public square. And as part of our mission, we provide you with an amazing array of resources on our website. And our website has just been revamped, remodeled, and retooled to be user-friendly. And I'm so excited about it because I believe that there's nothing like it out there anywhere. I want to encourage you today to go to truthandliberty.net and check out the Resources Center and the Get Equipped Center. On our Resources Center, you will find hundreds of links, hundreds of videos, articles, blogs, even America's original founding documents can be found on Truth and Liberty's Resources Center. It's searchable by topic, preset topic, or you can put in a custom search to find exactly what you need and what you're interested in. In the Get Equipped section, we link you to tools created by our strategic partners, including Pray, Vote, and Engage tools. We culture impact teams, civic action teams, biblical citizenship in modern America, biblical worldview training, and more. So go today to truthandliberty.net and find what you need to get equipped to stand for truth in the public square. All right, folks, we're back here on Truth and Liberty with our very special guest and good friend, Erin Lee, the Executive Director of Protect Kids Colorado and the founder of Stop Gender Ideology. Erin, thanks for joining us on Truth and Liberty today.
Hey, Richard. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, great to have you. Boy, there is so much happening in this arena. It's hard to know where to start. But I think what we ought to do probably is just begin with reminding our viewers a little bit about, I mean, you've been on the show several times, but can you just summarize for us how you got into this, the issue of gender ideology, fighting against transgenderism in our schools and everything else? What was your journey?
Yeah, I was the most unassuming, non-confrontational, laid-back parent until my daughter was secretly transitioned in a secret gender and sexuality club at 12 years old in 2021, where they taught her that if she's not comfortable in her body, she's actually a transgender boy, and talked about sexual attraction and explicit concepts and keeping secrets from parents. They brought in predacious members of our community to groom the kids. They connected my daughter with these predators online, and we were just totally caught off guard when she came home and suddenly proclaimed that she was transgender at barely 12 years old, a very innocent 12. And that spiraled us into a really dark and scary year with our family, rescuing her from this, what I believe is a cult, the gender cult that had captured her. And after we got her through that confusion, we decided to go public with what had happened to us in order to inform and help others. And our story kind of spun off within, a week of the Epic Times article coming out. I was on Tucker Carlson and Glenn Beck. And so our story became very, very public. And in doing that, Richard, we learned that this is a very pervasive issue that is affecting thousands and thousands of families across the country. It's especially happening here in Colorado. And I have become a voice for all the families who cannot be so public about what they're going through.
Yeah, so from your story, I remember, Erin, that your daughter was told, well, if you're not comfortable in your own body, that means you're trans. And if you're not sure who you're attracted to, then that means you're queer, right?
Right. And she was love bombed with stickers and flags and bracelets and celebration for proclaiming these new identities. So, again, the very cult-like mentality, and encouraged repeatedly not to tell her family what she was going through or about these secret club meetings.
Yeah, they told her, Mom and Dad aren't really your friends on this, but you can talk to us. And they set up gave her access to a secret chat or something like that on another app, right, that you didn't know about.
On Discord and WhatsApp, They connected her to these adult predators. And I should also mention that, we found out that night she broke the rule, which was don't tell your parents what you hear and hear, keep it here. We're very blessed that she felt comfortable talking to us.
Amen.
But when we pulled her out of school the next day, the school district sent in Child Protective Services for a well child check. So they automatically deemed us as abusive and, threatened the custody of all three of my children because I wasn't willing to go along with it.
Wow. And tell us about what happened when you tried to challenge this or find out what was going on, and you began to become vocal with the school board and administration at the school.
Yeah, we foolishly thought this is horrible. Our child was sexually abused. She was taken advantage of. We're going to call the school. They're going to apologize for what happened and course correct. And we were so wrong. We were vilified for speaking up. They deemed us as abusive, as the villains in the situation. They were proud of what they had done. They confirmed it was a confidential club in order to provide this safe space for kids away from their parents. And in digging into the school district, I got to sit down with the school board member who volunteers with the organization that groomed my daughter called Skittles for kids aged 2 to 11 to talk about gender and sex. They said, gender's never binary. We must be teaching kids at 5 years old.
Well, so Erin, we could, I encourage everybody to go back and check past episodes, but also you've got a documentary, past episodes of Truth and Liberty with you, where you've told your story, but you've also got a documentary film on the whole journey called Art Club, and people, how can they access that?
So artclubmovie.com. And thanks to Truth and Liberty and many others who got behind this effort, we aim to keep this free for people. So it's available on YouTube and Rumble. And it's an intimate look by Senator Kevin Lundberg, who's also been on the show, at our family and what we went through. My husband really dives in, and he's not a public person, but it gives a great perspective from mom and dad of what we went through as a family. And we tie in, David Barton and ADF and Family Research Council, some other families who've been through this. So really want to help people understand the whole picture of not just our family story, but why this is happening and what we can do about it.
Awesome. And so, Erin, you make that film available for free, but the work you do does take money. And so how can people support you?
Yeah, so I go by Erin for Parental Rights on all platforms, encourage people to follow. And then, as you said, I'm the executive director of Protect Kids Colorado. And that's really the whole of my work at the very moment, because we have some ballot measures going, and encourage everyone. You don't have to be in Colorado to support our efforts to engage the people of Colorado and change statute so that parents like me and families like mine are not harmed with gender ideology. And that's just protectkidscolorado.org.
Awesome. Well, so you mentioned Colorado. I feel like Colorado is almost the epicenter of the trans and LGBT ideology movement. There's something called Queer Endeavor that was launched at the University of Colorado at Boulder several years back. And the governor of our state is a man married to a man. And there have been it's an incredible what the onslaught has been here. Truth and Liberty folks, we're located here in Colorado. Erin's daughter was in a school in northern Colorado. Can you summarize for our viewers kind of like how bad is it here in Colorado? What are some of the laws that have been passed, the insane laws that we are struggling with here in this state on this subject?
Richard, I moved here in 2018 from Florida, and I didn't understand why at the time. We didn't have family here. We didn't have a job. I didn't understand why we were picking Colorado. I now understand this is spiritual battleground X for this issue. And I feel like the Lord brought our family here to go through what we've been through, to be a voice, to draw attention. You said it beautifully. Things are really, really bad in Colorado. It's kind of like, the testing ground for passing these bad policies in our school districts, in our state legislature. And since Jared Polis took office in 2018, so since 2019, there's just been a total, outpouring of these horrible laws that have been passed. They lowered the age of healthcare consent to 12. So 12-year-olds can seek their own healthcare without parent knowledge or consent. They made it illegal to do anything other than affirm gender-confused youth. So licensed counselors can only push kids further into this. They cannot help them out. of gender confusion. They mandated mental health screening for all 6th through 12th graders. And when the kids are deemed high risk, they're referred to the state's program called I Matter, which is all incredibly woke, LGBTQ affirming therapists. They mandated gender ideology in sex ed. They mandated the teaching of LGBTQ starting in first grade history and civics. And the State Department of Ed has even put out lesson plans for teachers to meet these standards that teach kids about the importance of sex work starting in first grade.
Wow.
So it's just been a barrage of bad laws. And then, of course, 1312 that was passed this year, 1309 that mandates all of us pay for these transgender procedures for anyone who wants them. For anything one doctor deems medically necessary, we, the taxpayers, have to pay for. And we're also a trans sanctuary state. They passed Senate Bill 188 through 190, and then again, that was in 2023. And then this year they passed Senate Bill 129, which makes us kind of an impenetrable fortress of protection for these mutilation doctors. There's no course of action for the people who were harmed. There's no holding the doctors accountable. You can't even investigate the doctors for malpractice in Colorado.
Wow, there was so much in that, Erin. I don't even know what to say. So when we say Colorado's now a trans sanctuary state, that means that minors can come here without their parents and get sex change operations, and no one can sue the doctor for doing it, even though he doesn't have parental consent.
Correct. No one can even investigate the doctor. This Senate Bill 129 that passed this year made it so that you cannot respond to a subpoena from the federal government, from a medical board. Virtually, they're untouchable. And it also took testosterone off of the drug monitoring program and made all of the existing data secret. So you cannot get any data on testosterone prescriptions in Colorado.
Yeah, so it's the LGBT mafia here, folks. For example, she mentioned it's a counseling ban. And they call it what do they call that, Erin? Where you can't go and get yeah, they call it conversion therapy, where like they're trying to convert you from being gay. But the idea is that even if you want help, if you're seeking help to avoid same-sex attraction, a minor cannot. A licensed health or a mental health care provider, a counselor, cannot help a minor who wants to escape same-sex attraction. That's called, they call it, conversion therapy, and it's illegal. I think it's a violation of the First Amendment, just absolutely obvious to me, controlling speech like that. And I think eventually that's going to be overturned at the U.S. Supreme Court. But we're in this battle, Erin, and it's incredible, some of the stuff that's going on. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think there's hope and reasons for optimism. And one of the biggest ones is the election of Donald Trump to the presidency and what's going on at the federal level. Are you keeping up with that? I know Trump, on day one in office, issued an executive order related to woke trans ideology in the federal government. And I tell you, he's just going through like a bull in a china shop getting rid of this stuff. What do you know about that?
I mean, I'm obviously so pleased that this is an issue that he's tackling. It's my platform. It's my issue. I should mention real quick that that law is being challenged by Childs v. Salazar, and the Supreme Court did take it up. I wrote an amicus brief in the cert petition. I'm writing another one for the case that should be heard in September or October. So encourage people to pay attention. That law, which was 1911-29, I believe will be struck down by the Supreme Court, and Colorado will once again be an example of at the Supreme Court.
Are you talking about the conversion therapy ban?
Correct.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Matt Staver is actually on campus with us today, who leads Liberty Counsel, and they are challenging that same ban that was in a local level in Florida at I think it was Orlando or somewhere. Perhaps they're involved in that case too. But anyway, go ahead. So how about Trump's executive order?
Man, he's doing everything he can with the power of the federal government. And I caution people that, yes, he's taken the pendulum and swung it back the other way, and in the biggest way that he can, but he's restricted by only having the power of federal funding. And so in the situation of Colorado, for example, I've had people say, well, why aren't the schools stopping this? The schools are still pushing all this. Trump's executive order said stop it. Well, in Colorado, only about 10% of funding in our public schools is federal funding. And so the school districts are thumbing their nose at the executive orders and saying, well, we won't take your funding then, and we'll continue to do what we're going to do. And so, yes, the pendulum is swinging back, but we, the people, especially in these blue states and these blue communities, have got to take the baton and continue running with local legislation, with our school boards, with, the influences here in our local communities.
Yeah. Well, and Erin, I know that you are also involved in some court proceedings. You just mentioned that Salazar case. Your family, you on behalf of your daughter, you and your husband have filed a lawsuit about what they did. How's that going?
It's going better than we could have expected. So we filed the suit in 2023. Pam Bondi actually took our case. We're represented by America First Policy Institute. So pretty cool that my attorney is now America's attorney. She's the real deal. I think
you
very,
probably
very
want her
highly.
back.
She's so good. And she took half my team with her to the DOJ. So we're all in good hands with Pam Bondi and her team. But it's going, as well as we could hope for. It was dismissed by the 10th Circuit, and that dismissal was upheld. But we are preparing to appeal to the Supreme Court. I do have a GoFundMe or a Give Send Go currently going to raise the funds for those printing costs. They're kind of exorbitant just to print and file, but we're really optimistic. We got a 5-page concurrence in that dismissal upholding that reads like a plea for the Supreme Court to hear our case. We do have standing. They did confirm that our kids were harmed and the policies were bad. So certainly welcome prayers that that case will be heard, and we'll set precedent once again in Colorado.
Yeah, amen. So you're suing the state of Colorado and the school district, saying that you violated our rights as parents in secretly transitioning our child. And amazing, folks, the District Court of Colorado dismissed that case. That's basically like saying there is no possible way for you to recover damages under Colorado law because of what happened. And the 10th Circuit has agreed with that. Now she's seeking the United States Supreme Court to review it, and I'm believing they're going to take that case and they're going to teach the whole country what's right and wrong in that situation. But there's another lawsuit I wanted to mention. So before we talk about, though, tell us about this one of these last laws that got passed in Colorado this last session. Here locally, we call it 1312. It's House Bill 25-1312, and it's basically compelled speech, right? They're going to force us to say what they want us to say. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, well, as it was originally written, 1312 was hands down the most egregious bill of all time in the history of our country. It was labeling parents who will not transition their kids, giving the courts the right to call that coercive control under the law and use that in custody situations, not just in mom versus dad, but in loving two-parent households like mine who are not willing to affirm and are being attacked by Child Protective Services. So we brought a lot of attention to it. And I think 1312 was a gift from the Lord. I really do. We've been waving our hands saying, help, we need help in Colorado for years, as I said, since 2019. And the whole world began paying attention to what was happening here with this bill. The Wall Street Journal even published an op-ed that I wrote, which that's amazing progress forward when the Wall Street Journal is paying attention and publishing our opinions on this. Now, the pressure that we put on caused them to change the language. In my opinion, the law is the same. The end result is the same. So they may have manipulated the language. I think our governor put up a smoke screen to say, oh, we took out that coercive control stuff. There's nothing to see here. Parents are fine. But the reality is that parents are already losing custody of their kids for not affirming their transgender identity. I'm helping a handful of dads right now. 3 of them are very public here in the state of Colorado who have had their custody rights stripped for not being willing to call their daughters boys or to medicalize their young sons. In one case, it was a very left-leaning dad, a public school teacher, whose wife suddenly transitioned both of their sons, 7 and 9. She herself suddenly said she was trans. Then she suddenly said the 2 kids were non-binary and trans. And when the dad expressed skepticism about the 9-year-old getting puberty blockers here at Children's Hospital, that's when the wife took him to court and he lost 100% of his custody rights. Wow. So it's already happening. 1312, if they had, as written, it would have allowed us to challenge in court. By taking that language out, it enables them to continue this as practice and procedure.
So 1312 is state law that makes it illegal discrimination in the state of Colorado to not refer to a trans person by their preferred name and pronoun in a public setting, in an employment setting, or in any kind of advertising related to that. And so we are immediately up against a free speech here issue with that. And Protect Kids Colorado is a plaintiff along with some other organizations, and that is a new lawsuit that's been filed. So hopefully that'll turn out well. We're believing for the best there. Erin, tell us about. You've got another project that I definitely want everybody to know about, especially here in Colorado, and those are the ballot measures. But before we get there, let's talk just a little bit, pull back a little bit, and talk about gender ideology. We hear all this craziness and we wonder what the heck is going on here. But what is it that they're actually teaching in gender ideology? What is the idea? Start off with just the word gender. What is it? Because it feels like it changed somewhere and no one gave me the memo.
I'm glad you brought that up, Richard. I'm not a fan of the word at all. I believe there are two sexes, male and female, zero genders, and infinite personalities. And so they've conflated your personality with gender and gender identity. And so this, when people ask me, where did this come from? How did we get here? I typically say all roads lead to Marxism. The Communist Manifesto laid out exactly what they intended to do, march through the institutions. And so our higher education system has been completely hijacked, and our whole generation of teachers have been led to believe what I call toxic empathy. Their empathy has been weaponized. If they're not grounded in biblical truth, then they're being deceived by what the world is saying is kind and true and empathetic. And, on a wide scale in all 50 states, even in conservative school districts in conservative states, they are teaching gender ideology, meaning there are infinite genders, that you can change your sex, that you can pick your sex. And as we talked about at the top of the show, they're starting this with kids as young as age 2.
The whole philosophy of it, if I understand it right, is that whatever you feel and think in your own mind about your sex identity is the new reality. That is real. And everything, including other people's speech and behavior and your own body, you have a right to force that to conform to your delusion. Now, that's how I understand it. Do you think I'm accurate in how I said that?
No, they're interpreting this gender ideology basically says that however you feel is absolute, and everyone must comply or else it's discriminatory or abusive in the case of parents. And that's what 1312 did. It says if you will not use the chosen name and pronouns of a person in any place of public accommodation, which includes faith organizations, Christian schools, then that's deemed discriminatory. And they even passed a sister law. A lot of people don't realize they passed House Bill 1239, which sets the penalty. And what they set within 1239 was that every time you use the wrong name for someone, that's not their chosen name, you call the man by his male name, they can sue you for $50,000 for each time you do it.
It's absolutely incredible, draconian, and as you were saying, this is not the only law in Colorado or even around America. There are many, many layers to this whole thing, and we've got to stand up and fight against this. We've got to get this stuff undone and push back because it's going to destroy kids and families and people's lives. And you're trying to do that, Erin, here in Colorado in lots of different ways. But tell us about the new ballot initiatives that Protect Kids Colorado is sponsoring and how we can be a part of it.
Yes. Well, thank you, Richard, for being there at the very beginning when we conceptualized Protect Kids Colorado and helping us get off the ground.
Absolutely.
We're just a group of believers who came together and said, we can't push back in the legislature. We can't get amendments through on the bad bills. We certainly can't pass the good ones. But we, the people, have the citizens initiative process here in Colorado. About half of the states have this. And in our Constitution, Article 5, Section 1, it says we, the people, reserve the right to pass law. And so we just have to get a certain amount of signatures. In this case, it's about 130,000 per issue to get on the 2026 ballot and let the people of Colorado have a say. And the 3 issues that we're running, the first one is setting a penalty of life in prison, no chance of parole if you buy or sell a child for sex. So protecting kids from sex trafficking. The second issue is protecting girls' sports. So if you are XY, you do not belong in XX athletics and spaces. It's that simple. And then the third issue that I'm chairing is protecting kids from these irreversible sex change procedures. And they are just that. They are irreversible. You know, you hear this lie that if a child's not able to transition, they'll commit suicide. And after 4 years of my work, I understand the opposite is true. That when you push them into the impossible pursuit to be the opposite sex, that's what leads to mental health struggles. And kids' brains aren't fully formed. We are pushing them into these life-altering decisions that they can't even fully comprehend. And so we just want to protect minors in the state of Colorado from being faced with that decision to chemically castrate and sterilize and chop off healthy body parts.
And so all three ballot measures, if I'm remembering right, have gone through the state committee and have been approved for you to circulate. And so they are, I don't know if you've got them printed up yet or not, but can people begin signing these petitions? Because remember, folks, you've got to get 130,000 valid signatures of registered adult voters in Colorado before it will even go on the ballot next fall. So we got to get those signatures. Are they ready for signature?
Not just yet. We're way ahead of schedule. And that's because, for example, last year we filed 20 ballot initiatives. The Secretary of State denied 17 of them. They tried to say the word parent was too confusing for Colorado voters. I mean, it was nonsensical, their arguments against us. And so we didn't anticipate winning on the first try this time around. We're blessed to have Scott Gessler, the former Secretary of State, as our legal counsel, and he's brilliant. And he got us through ahead of schedule. So we have approval to print. We will be printing in the next few weeks. We'll have them in hands by July 1st. And anyone can take a petition. You know, there's a lot that makes people feel hopeless here in Colorado. We said this is spiritual battleground X. It's a dark place. We've got a huge uphill battle, and people struggle with a way to engage and make change. But we've done all the work for people. All they have to do is take a petition, have some conversations with the people around you, get 40 signatures and return it. And if we all just do a little bit, then we will absolutely get on the ballot and we will topple the dominoes in Colorado when we, the people, say we've had enough.
So if people want to put on their calendar right now, July 1st, check back with PKC, Protect Kids Colorado, and see if you can sign up to circulate this petition. How will they do that? Will there be a place on the website for them to express their interest, or maybe call or email or something?
Yes, so they already can. We're at protectkidscolorado.org, and there's volunteer buttons all over the website. Those go straight to me, so you'll hear from me personally if you sign up to volunteer. And we have a great county captain system. So we have captains in every county who are in charge of the petitions for their area. And if people want to sign up now, we'll go ahead and get them connected to those captains so that July 1, the petitions will be in their hand.
Okay, that's awesome. So once again, we don't have the website up, but protectkidscolorado.org, right? Okay, so awesome. Okay, so let's dive back into the first, or the issue that you're leading on, this ballot measure would ban sex change surgery on minors. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. These,
would it also,
orthodonties and phalloplasties.
Would it also ban the hormone treatment or just the surgery?
Just the surgeries. Unfortunately, we were blessed to have some great polling donated to our organization. We did, a series of polling and focus groups, and the people of Colorado don't understand the hormones. We're just not in a place yet where people are ready to guarantee a win at the ballot box on this issue. So it's just the surgeries this time around. And if it were up to me, I would have banned social transition as well. I think even just telling a child they're born in the wrong body should not be legal. But we have a plan for continuing the effort of banning those puberty blockers and addressing social transition in the legislature or in future initiatives.
And Erin, the United States Supreme Court, we just saw it announced, I think this morning, was it out of Tennessee? A really important case on this subject. What was that?
Yeah, so the Skermetti case, it's a great day to be doing this interview because the SCOTUS ruled 6-3 that you can ban these procedures, both the hormones and the surgeries for children. And this was Tennessee did a complete ban actually after Matt Walsh exposed Vanderbilt hospitals, how they were mutilating, just horrifically mutilating children. And they put a ban through the legislature, and then it was challenged. Joe Biden jumped on the challenge, and the Supreme Court upheld that you can put a ban in place for these procedures on minors. And 27 states have done so. They are all red states. They've all done so through their legislature. And so we're excited that Colorado will set the precedent for blue states, very blue states, by the will of the people, also saying we're not going to allow our children to be harmed in this way.
So these surgeries, people need to understand, if they don't already, that they don't make a boy into a girl or a girl into a boy. Is that right?
Impossible. It's impossible to change your sex. It's in every fabric of your being. It's in your DNA. You're either XX or XY. And so, as I said, it's an impossible pursuit. And they're selling kids a lie. They're pushing the suicide myth on parents and on children. If you don't transition, you will commit suicide. Your child will commit suicide. We know the opposite to be true. But they're selling kids a lie that if you just change this thing, you'll feel more like a boy. And you can live your true, authentic self. And every detransitioner, which is someone who's been medicalized and has now come out of that darkness, every detransitioner I've ever spoken to has said it made me worse. Every procedure made me worse. And with every one I tried, they would push the next one. I tried the hormones, that didn't work. So they pushed what they call top surgery, which is just a euphemism for a bilateral mastectomy, the removal of healthy breasts. And they just keep pushing, well, that didn't work. Maybe I get a hysterectomy and that will make me feel more like a man. And with each procedure, their mental health goes down, down, down. So it's a path to darkness, and it's a lie.
Yeah. And kids, anybody really who goes through that, as you call it, medicalization, they suffer permanent sterilization. They will never have children, right?
That's right. So anyone who has these puberty blockers, which stops your normal puberty from progressing into cross-sex hormones, is guaranteed to be sterilized. And what's really scary, here in the state of Colorado, our Medicaid website, so our publicly funded insurance website, recommends starting these blockers at Tanner stage 2, which is 8 years old. So they're recommending with our tax dollars to start sterilizing kids at age 8. And 98% of kids that go on these puberty blockers as young as age 8 go on to the cross-sex hormones, which guarantees sterilization.
And then they don't advise the families or the children or anything on the negative effects or the health effects of this at any stage. It's just like, oh, you want to do this? Okay, let's go, right?
Totally lacking informed consent. And I've spoken with families in Colorado whose kids were fast-tracked one therapy session and they were referred for the hormones, or one therapy session and they were referred for the surgeries as young as 14 years old. So there's no stopgap. It's not scientifically backed. This is all based on the Dutch protocol. So one little isolated study in the Netherlands that was then, translated into this is good for everyone. And we in America ran with it. WPATH, World Professional Association of Transgender Health, became the gold standard. And that's a membership organization. You don't even have to be a doctor to belong. And they put out the WPATH files, my friend Mia Hughes, which prove that they know they're harming kids. They know that there's no scientific backing for what they're doing. They've said such. It's been published. And so there really is no evidence for pushing any of these procedures on kids.
How does a child, a minor, how do they expect them to be able to evaluate the impact on their lives and on their health from such a radical, crazy procedure like that?
I think the world will look back on this like frontal lobotomies, that it was pushed as medically necessary. And many people were raising the red flag saying, this isn't right. This isn't helpful. This is harming people, not helping them. And, unfortunately, our culture was captured. Our medical institutions were captured by an ideologically driven agenda that's not based in science. And I encourage people to go to stoptheharmdatabase.com. I think it's just stoptheharm.com. because Do No Harm has put out, based on public insurance information, figures of kids who have been harmed by this. And they found that just based on public insurance information, that doesn't include self-pays, that doesn't include Kaiser, that $125 million, 14,000 children in a 5-year period in America have been harmed by these procedures from 2019 to 2024. So when people say that's not happening, it's isolated, it's a minute group of kids, it's not. It's tens of thousands of kids who've been harmed.
Okay, well, the next ballot measure, Erin, that you're sponsoring, that PKC is sponsoring, is no boys and girls sports, right? Now, does it work both ways, or does it say that you have to play in the sport that's set up for your biological sex at birth? It has to correspond?
Correct. And you'll be hard pressed to find females attempting to participate in male sports. I think that's because we all know that there's a biological difference, that men are stronger and faster and differently abled than females. So it's atypical for females to try to play in male sports. It's typically males invading female spaces. But yes, we define it as your reproductive organs, and that's to account for those genetic anomalies. So you are required to play in the athletic league of male or female according to your reproductive organs.
What if you've gone through the surgery or whatever?
Whether you produce sperm or ova. So even in those rare cases of anomalies where someone's like an XXY, they still only produce one or the other. And so we worked with doctors to find the clearest definition to make sure there was no confusion. And ironically, at the Colorado Secretary of State, they tried to argue that Colorado voters would not understand what male and female mean as defined by their reproductive organs.
They've done such a good job of confusing everybody. There may be some that don't understand. Okay, Erin, and would this apply to all schools, secondary schools and below in Colorado, or just public schools, or what's the scope of this ballot measure?
So it's actually anyone that takes public funding. So we would be the kind of a precedent-setting law, and that you've seen other bans take place that are strictly for public schools and institutions. We're tackling all leagues, and about 80% of athletic leagues are private, the Olympics, for example. And so we're aiming to encompass more than just public schools being held accountable by this. And this issue is being chaired by Jennifer Say, who I know has been on the show with me before, who founded XXXY, who's also filed a lawsuit against 1312 with ADF behind her. So she's a real champion for female sports, and she's a leftist voter. She's not your typical person for speaking up on this issue. And what we have found is that this is a 90-10 issue, that a majority of people in this country and in Colorado agree that men and women are different, and that men should not be invading the single-sex spaces of women.
You know, it seemed like that for years and years, the feminist movement sort of endorsed, or sometimes expressly said this, sometimes implicitly, but that there's no difference between men and women. Women can do what men can do, and it's like the old song, "I can do what you can do, better." But we weren't ever allowed to talk about that. That was taboo, right? You can't ever say, "Oh no, there are real differences," because that makes you a sexist. But now the left it's like completely ignoring that for this whole transgender thing? Or are they just in a complete state of philosophical and biological confusion here? They want to say there's no differences, but yet we have a right to pursue these differences. And yet don't pay attention if a guy with a penis is over here in women's swimming or other stuff like this. I mean, where are we on this?
They've come full circle in their argument. Like, they've argued themselves to the point where there is no argument. We have truth on our side, and the smokescreen has been blown away on what they were trying to convince us of. And so it's almost like they've come full circle. And even the radical feminists are coming out and saying, wait a minute, we fought against this. Men can't be women. It doesn't work that way. Women we're different. Yeah. And so they've run out of an argument, really. We're clearly on the up with our argument against gender ideology in general. They've just run out of things to say.
Yeah. Well, it's patently unfair. Anybody with half a brain can see that it's wrong to let a male compete in a women's sports program, or else the women won't have any championships left. They won't have any ability to achieve like that. And the whole point of women's sports was to protect that right. So it's wild to me how people on the left can say they're for women and at the same time say that biological men should be able to compete in women's sports. It just seems like insanity to me.
Yeah, and it's especially harmful for these young girls. I
Right.
have spoken at school board meetings where there are 15, 16, 17-year-old girls pleading to their school board to help them because they're being forced to undress in front of boys and they're being forced to potentially get hurt competing in front of boys. And it's up to us, the adults, to
Right.
protect these kids. 15-year-olds should not have to self-advocate. How insane that we've gotten to this place where we're ignoring children's pleas for safety and fairness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so sex trafficking of minors, the third measure that you're promoting. There's a little bit of history behind this in Colorado in that the legislature had a bill that was going to increase the penalties on sex trafficking of minors, and the Democrats killed it. Am I right on that?
Yeah, Representative Brandy Bradley, who, if you don't follow her, please do. She's amazing. She's such a fierce mama bear, a close friend of mine. She ran this bill twice. It was declined for a second time, where she was just trying to increase the penalties for raping children. And in the state of Colorado, most people don't understand you can rape 3 different children on 3 different occasions, and you are guaranteed probation. It's not until the fourth time that there's even a potential for jail time. And even then, in 70% of those cases, they still are let off with only probation. And so she was just trying to increase the penalty. Like, you rape a child, you go to jail. And the Democrats, in all, they went on a party line vote. Every single one of them voted against that bill.
Man, I'd like to know what are they thinking? Is it because they have friends and other people that are involved in this stuff, or is there some ideological thing? But it's absolutely incredible. But we're going to fix that with this ballot measure, and it's going to impose a lifetime in prison for anyone who sells a child for sex. Does it also increase punishment for people that engage in sex with minors?
Yep, anyone who sells or buys a child for sex. And interestingly, in our focus groups, the people of Colorado were more angry about the buyer than the seller. They were angry about the people who create the demand. And a lot of people crossed out life in prison and wrote in death penalty. So the people of Colorado are ready to hold child rapists accountable. And this is a very agreeable issue.
Yeah.
The Democrats who voted against it in the legislature, I don't think represent the majority of people who will absolutely vote in favor of this.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we're down to the end here on our time, Erin. Been great having you on as always, and I just want to remind everybody that these 3 measures here in Colorado are going to be available July 1st or so. So be sure to go on Erin's website, protectkidscolorado.org, and sign up to get a copy, a packet, so you can help circulate, but also volunteer in other ways, and be sure to contribute to help the important work that they're doing. And also, Erin, you said you have a GoFundMe page for your family's lawsuit against the Poudre School District. How do they find that?
Yes, it's on Give, Send, Go, and you can just search Lee versus Poudre, Poudre, and we're raising. It's going to cost us about $15,000 just for printing and filing, and we're getting there. We've got a lot. We're about 2/3 of the way there. People have been very, very gracious and blessed us, but we need that by July 4th.
Yeah, well, let's get her over the top on that. And guys, I wanted to remind you today about our free giveaway. It's my booklet, Faith for America. God has been faithful to us in the past, and we need to trust Him. He's going to deliver our country now, going to turn us around. You can get a free copy of this by going to truthandlibertygtn.com and make this yours today. And so, Erin, I'm so proud of you and what you're doing, and you're just doing an incredible work. I hope everybody will get behind you and support you in this. And if we can help you in any way, let me know. And thanks again for joining us on the show. All of you who are watching today, appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to tune in next time here on Truth and Liberty as we continue to fight tooth and toenail, as Andrew would say, to turn America back to its godly foundations. God bless you all today, and thank you for watching.